Tonight's speaker is Doug Farr, and he's going to be talking about sustainable urbanism and community livability. And the Land Trust is one of a part of a collective of organizations and businesses and metro government and citizens who believe that the success of our city is dependent on its health, its beauty, its livability, its walkable neighborhoods, its parks large and small, its clean water to drink, its places to hike, bike, fish, swim, hunt, and boat. It's food that is grown in backyards, its schoolyards, and on local farms and tree-lined streets, and all of the things that so many of you believe in. And we have the opportunity to set a roadmap for the next 25 years for Nashville, what we need to do through this period. So we want all of you to be involved, and we'll talk just a little bit more about that in a minute. But first, I want to recognize if we have some council members here in attendance. I know somebody was going to help me see who might be here. I saw Peter Westerholm. Where's Peter? And am I missing anybody? So now everybody has to go home and tell your council people that they missed the world's greatest talk from Doug Farr when you get back. But before I introduce our speaker, we have a very special artistic performance to remind us that a great city is one that integrates creativity in everything it does, whether we're addressing equity or the economy or the environment. So I'm going to turn this over to Kelly Tipler, who is the CEO of Turnip Green Creative Reuse.
Hello, we are just thrilled to be here tonight. I'm going to just give you a few facts about Turnip Green Creative Reuse, and then I'm going to turn it over to the beautiful artwork that we have some local artists that have brought that have done all of their work through reuse. Basically, Turnip Green Creative Reuse was founded in 2010. There we go. Yeah, patience. Our founding board members came together and did some research across the country. We visited other creative reuse centers and tried to really see what would work best in Nashville. And we kind of settled on one in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, the Scrap Exchange. They have been around for 20 years, and they've been through ups and downs. They started small, just like we did, but they've been through many ups and downs and have sustained, which is exactly what we're talking about tonight. So we thought that would be the best model for us to use, and that's what we've done. We were able to launch last year as a nonprofit due to the support of Untitled Artists Group. They have become our fiscal sponsor. We worked with the Arts and Business Council in Nashville to get that done. And hopefully very soon we will have our own 501c3, and instead of being their child, we'll just be great friends. So. Creative reuse, in case you didn't know, is that it's a very effective way to keep materials out of the landfill while enhancing our community. And basically what we do is we divert waste from the landfill. We collect materials from businesses, from the community, and we take those unwanted materials, process it, basically sort it, and try to think about where it might go. It might go to an educator, an artist, into a community garden. Somebody might use it for recreation. We partner with artists, schools, teachers, businesses to breathe new life into old unwanted items that would normally just be thrown away. Our current services, we do waste diversion, material distribution, meaning we take stuff to people that will actually use it. We do education and workshops. We just got done doing a workshop today for the Nashville Public Library all-staff retreat. It was great. Everybody was painting on books. It was a perfect tie-in. We also do job creation for artists. We try very hard to hire our artists to do our workshops. We believe they're valuable, and we want to make sure that they are well used and recognized and valued in our community. We also sponsor and support artists and educators. So if they want a show at the Untitled Art Show, we sponsor that. We promote them. We try to make sure that educators have materials in our school system. And but there's a big but. So we do a lot, but we are very small in some ways. We decided instead of starting with a lot of capital, we would start with education. And so we've been out in the community doing workshops. However, we don't have a very big space. We work out of a very small private storage space, and we are needing to actually get some space. So I think this might be the right group to take care of that. Thank you. These are a few of our collaborative partners. I won't go through all of them, but I think the important thing to note on here is that we are community-wide, and we try to work from everybody from the individual artists that we need to meet in a coffee shop to get books to them, or all the way working up to all the teachers in the Metro Nashville Public School System or the library system. Great. Our vision, we basically have a four-tier or four-branch vision. One of them would include a retail space where we can invite people in to actually purchase materials very inexpensively in order to sustain the nonprofit. We also want to have artist studios specifically for artists that reuse materials, a green gallery, and of course to continue to expand our current services. Helping people keep things out of landfills and educating them and providing workshops. So right now, our needs are basically space and volunteers. We have been very fortunate to have great volunteers, but we always need more. So I'm going to move on now to our artists. Clay Bush. He studied fiber arts at the Appalachian Center for Craft with countless processes and techniques of manipulating fabric, upholstering furniture, became the avenue of applying fabric from form to function. After 3 years of apprenticing at a high-volume upholstery shop, a greater financial opportunity led to 5 years as an architectural sign company in Nashville. Building and installing custom signage nationwide kept hands busy making and creating. In those 5 years, upholstering furniture and exploring various applications of textiles continued to be a source of creativity. In 2012, I love this part, a fortunate series of events led to the creation of Salvage. Upholstering and design salvage has shown its work from New Orleans Earth Day Festival to University School of Nashville's Art Eclectic. And currently his work can be seen at Arabellum, which is an artist co-op. And I say I love that fortunate series because some would say unfortunate series. So Clay, would you like to come up and talk about your work, please?
Thanks, Kelly. I'm Clay, and I make stuff out of seatbelts. As you heard there, I studied fiber arts, so all applications of using textiles and fabric. There's countless ways that can be done. And so I go to junkyards around Middle Tennessee, and I gather seatbelts from these cars. I have a 32-year-old car, so I found myself at a junkyard one day and looked over and saw the seatbelts and thought, I got to do something with it. I reupholster furniture, all types of commercial to residential furniture. I've been doing that for quite a while. So using an industrial sewing machine really gave me the opportunity to use this material. I'll spend a good 8-hour day at a junkyard and gather 120 pounds worth of seatbelts. I do use some discretion. I don't take all the seatbelts because some of them are not worth taking. The buckles, as you can see, are also from older cars, and I thoroughly washed them all before assembling them and putting them together. Some of the new ways I'm using the seatbelts is taking pieces of furniture that would otherwise be thrown away and upholstering them. This is a set of benches I did for a client. All this is seat belts put on like a laminate, basically like Formica would go on, but with seat belts. And also there's a bench up here on the stage that I just put together for this event this other day. And that's just an example of different ways that the material can be used. And not only can it be sewn, it can be woven together. And I look forward to setting up some workshops to teach kids and try to figure out a way to, introduce that into their lives. I used to teach hands-on workshops when I was in college with kids, and I love sharing processes and techniques of creating and making, especially when we can reuse something that would otherwise be discarded. So here's my contact information if you want to write it down. I just recently started a Facebook page, so I'm still learning how to do all that stuff, but if you're interested, hopefully I'll get a chance to meet some of y'all later. Thanks.
Thank you, Clay. And we're going to go ahead and move on to our next artist. Ken and Amy Walls are a husband-wife team. Ken is a mural painter, faux artist, and decorative artist. He has worked closely with the interior design community for 17 years in both commercial and residential venues. Amy is a textile and papier-mâché artist. They are untitled artists, and you can see them on the Franklin Art Walk. Ken is showing and participating in many events and shows at the Picture This gallery downtown and in Hermitage. And I also wanted to mention that they do show at Cheekwood as well.
Thanks, Kelly. Good afternoon. I'm Ken, and this is my wife, Amy. And, we love cardboard. We love paper mache and styrofoam. And so we have stacks in our house. If you've seen the show Hoarders, you could pertain that to us. However, we are keeping that for a really good reason. And what we do, with example of the W, that's actually was made for a show, and lights, and it drew Kelly, which was so funny, because Kelly came in and she ran right to it, and she's like, "Oh, that's cardboard." And so you can do so much with it. It's malleable. We do scarecrows for Cheekwood. This is actually a scarecrow that was recycled from a floor lamp that we made for a show the year before. So we recycle our recycle. It's quite fun. An arrow, star, same thing, cardboard. That's the original. That's 8 foot tall in our living room, because we can't do anything. We either do 8 by 10 mausoleums, or we do things that are large. And, the mausoleums are just an example of what we do. Last year we did a 9 foot tall paper mache mausoleum, and for this year, for the art crawl in October, we're doing 12 feet mausoleums. And so, our house, Amy makes clothes. This is a Christmas tablecloth that we found. And we're like, that could be a ball gown. She also makes clothes. She's been known to make clothes from upholstery off of vintage furniture. So anything works. Again, mausoleums. I think we're leaving. Yeah, this was our 9 foot tall. Now, you haven't had anything unless you've had a mausoleum with your name on it. I mean, come on, isn't that the best thing? So, and then this is Satine. This was done with Mardi Gras beads. We named her after Nicole Kidman's character in Moulin Rouge. And so I was at home one day and I couldn't get my paint open. However, I did have a lot of hot glue, and we had 40 pounds of Mardi Gras beads. So I spent the day doing something else. Pleasure talking to you.
I wish we could let everybody show all their stuff and explain it. It's so interesting when they use reusable materials. Moving on to our next artist, Sarah Shearer. She received a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Painting from Belhaven College and relocated to Nashville, Tennessee. She has primarily shown her work locally in both solo and group exhibitions. Most recently, her work was featured in a solo exhibition through the month of March at Twist Gallery in downtown Nashville. She's been a resident artist in the Downtown Presbyterian Church Studios since 2009. She works primarily as a painter, but periodically challenges her creative work practice by working in a range of other mediums such as printmaking, graphite and paper, mixed media, and sculptural installations. So Sarah's going to tell you a little bit about her reuse work.
Hi. So as Kelly said, I traditionally have been a painter and done small and large scale paintings, but usually on canvas or murals on walls, that kind of thing. And last year I got inspired to work with books and became more three-dimensional with my work. And I started doing projects like this where I was taking book pages, and they were books that had been designated as trash. Somebody had thrown them into recycling. And so don't worry, I didn't destroy any books that were being used. So those Christmas trees, I took book pages and cut them. And I actually, as I was preparing this tonight and looking at it, I thought that's kind of funny that we started with trees, made them into books, and then I made them back into trees again. So I started making those and selling them locally at Eastside Story, a little bookstore in East Nashville. And then Kelly and I became connected, and she told me her mission and what she does, and I have been able to work with her to continue my book projects and kind of move into other types of work. And this is an example where I took children's illustrated books and used them as the background, like a collage, mixed media. So the book page is showing through, and then there's paint on top. And this is another example book page with cutout on canvas. Some other objects, bookmarks, cards. I've really been able to reuse books in all kinds of ways. Pumpkins were big in the fall. So I've really just enjoyed having this resource and found it really valuable. And the more I have gotten in contact with Turnip Green, I've realized there are so many other opportunities besides just books. So I'm sure this will develop into something more, but I see a great value in taking these things that otherwise would have ended up in a landfill and being able to kind of give them a new life. And that's what I'm doing.
Thank you so much for having us tonight. We really appreciate it. And there's our Turnip Green's contact information. If you'd like to look us up, please do. We don't have brochures because we're trying to be green. So jot it down or take a picture. I love it. Somebody's taking a picture with their phone. That's perfect. So thank you very much.
If that doesn't jumpstart our minds into creativity, I don't know what will. But thank you so much, Kelly. Just a bit about what Nashville Next is, and then I want to get you to our speaker very quickly. Nashville Next is a 2-year project that collects and synthesizes the ideas of people who care about Nashville and its future, on topics important to Nashville's future, and then puts forth a plan for arts and culture, economic development, education, the environment, transportation, equity, inclusion and diversity, livable and healthy communities, public safety, children and youth. Ambitious, undoubtedly. But all of these things are such critical components to having a fantastic and the best and healthiest place for now and for the future. This plan will be translated into policy and funding priorities and will have a significant impact on what kind of place we become. It will ultimately be a county-wide plan to guide Nashville through 2040. And it needs every good idea and your voices behind those ideas. And I have no doubt it can happen in a great way. So thank you tonight for coming tonight. One of the things that the Nashville Next Steering Committee wants to do is to have great education. And so we're having a series of speakers who will bring some other perspectives, some national perspectives from other places too, and will challenge us with new ideas and new strategies. If you're interested in some of the local perspectives on any of these topics, I urge you to go to NashvilleNext.net and read some of the background reports that have been put together. They are not recommendations, they are to give you a baseline sense, and they scream for your comments too. So I urge you to do that. But also, secondly, I urge you to continue this conversation from tonight on News Channel 5's Open Line, where local leaders, Tiffany Wilmot, raise your hand, Tiffany, over there, and Stephanie McCullough, and my Land Trust colleague, Audra Ladd, are going to discuss Doug Farr's speech. Nice. Score, 1 to 10, and share perspectives on Nashville's environment. And that's 7 to 8 on News Channel 5's Open Line tomorrow night. A few notes real quickly on this evening's format. After Doug speaks, he's going to take questions from the audience, and I can guarantee you, as much as you challenge us, this is a group that's going to challenge you to challenge back, and we really appreciate you being here. As you came in, you hopefully got a comment card, and that's really to help guide the Nashville Next Steering Group to be able to do better and better as we have these events. Please, this is a silence your cellular devices, but if you want to do any outreach through social media and you hear something interesting that you want to send, you can send it to Mind Mixer. I'm sure you've got your pen out right now, 970-6600, and start to get it out on Facebook or Twitter at hashtag NashvilleNext. So now I want to introduce you to Doug Farr, who is going to talk to us on tonight's topic, which is sustainable urbanism and community livability. Doug is the founding principal of the architecture and urban design firm Farr Associates. It's based in Chicago and widely known for its early and continuing work in sustainable practices. Last year, Farr Associates was named the outstanding architectural firm in Chicago. Doug was the founding chair of the U.S. Green Building Council's Lead for Neighborhood Development, LEED ND, core committee. And this interdisciplinary group of professionals that worked on this system, most everybody in this room I know is to some degree familiar with LEED, but the LEED ND neighborhood development integrates the smart growth, walkability, green building practices into standards and metrics that can scale up sustainability to a neighborhood level. And I'm told that there is now in the works a LEED open space set of a standard. So I think that will be a great addition to this whole field too. But based on this firm's pioneering sustainable design practices and the many insights that he gained from chairing the LEED ND work, he has authored a book called The Urban Planning, and it's an urban planning bestseller. It's called Sustainable Urbanism, Urban Design with Nature, and did that in 2008. And he comes from a background of nature, which I suspect he will maybe tell us about. So please join me in welcoming Doug Farr as he shares his insights. Thank you. Thank you.
How we doing? Are we having fun yet? I got to tell you, I'm a little warm. Do you mind if I take my coat off? You know, I've come from the north. We always go to the south in the winter, and it's so warm here. I just can barely tolerate it. Yeah, actually, it looks like we're going to have a snowball fight after this. So anyway, thanks for that very gracious introduction. So I said I'm from Chicago. Has anybody read a book called The Devil in the White City? It's a pretty popular book. If you haven't, it's kind of devilish. But I mention it only to say one of the chief protagonists in it is a gentleman named Daniel Burnham. And Daniel Burnham was a Chicago architect, a very famous one, who invented the modern field of planning. So the project that you're undertaking here, Nashville Next, really is a descendant of the Chicago Plan of 1909. Now, a lot of people think planning is something that foreigners are imposing on us, or that is from outside forces. Well, guess what? Planning was invented in America by an American in Chicago, right? It is the most American of things to improve your community. We have always done this. And so this is a continuation of a long, long tradition. Nothing foreign about this. This is what people do across the United States of America to make their communities better. So I just wanted to start with that little bit of ringing endorsement. So I've been told to challenge you. You've heard who I am. First thing is, who the heck are you? Who's a student? Any students? Teachers? Let's see what we got. Council folk, elect people that run for office. Any of them? 1, 2, hello. Let's see, planners. A couple of those. Developers, architects, engineers, lawyers, doctors. Help me out here. Scientists, artists. We heard a few artists. Very nice presentation, by the way. I'm not sure what I'm going to use it for, but I want one of those, seatbelt purses. I don't know what that's for. Who have I forgotten? Farmers. Any farmers? Okay. Neighbors. Is anyone a neighbor of anyone else? Okay. Apparently there are neighbors here. How about voters? Okay. No hands can stay down for that one. Musicians. Park lovers. Landscape architects, a few of those. People who fish, people who hunt, people who hike, people who run, people who walk. Okay, good. That says everyone's here. So that's exactly it. So I want to talk to you about sustainability. So, whoops. I'm not sure what I just did. Help. Help. The show's over, folks. So anyway, what I wanted to say about sustainability is this. So I'm an architect, trained as an architect, but I practice as an urban designer and planner. Thank you. So there we go. Okay, so don't touch that. Do touch that. Okay, got it. There's 2 sets of arrows. Okay, use the one that's lit up now. Okay, got it. So sustainability is a fancy word for what was talked about, which is, it's about equity, fairness, it's about economy, prosperity, and it's about the environment, the earth that sustains us. Now, ideally, it's this integrated package where everything you do has 6 benefits, right? That's the ideal, and we all aspire to that. But what I find is, time and again, people approach sustainability from some corner. You're a landscape architect, it's about trees. You're an architect, it's about energy or windows. Everyone has a sort of corner on it. And so this overcoming silos, the picture behind me is silos. And by the way, is it possible to turn these lights off? Because I think we could really put some people to sleep if we just turn the lights off. And that would be interesting. But anyway, people approach sustainability in silos. And overcoming this is the biggest thing that we need to do. And so this plan, I think, and the conversations you'll have in developing the plan are pretty key in doing that. So when you hear the word sustainability, it usually doesn't kind of come up as part of a regional plan. That's probably the last thing you'd think about is associating with sustainability. A lot of times we think about, small things of daily life. The light bulb, right? We've all heard about, the great compact fluorescent, now the LED light bulb that makes things so much more efficient. That's a lot of what the press thinks sustainability is about. Or an electric or a hybrid car, a Prius in the middle. Again, that's sort of what sustainability is about. If you're expansive in your thinking and you can spell the word lead without the letter A, thank you. 2 more times, please. 2 more times. Then you can think about sustainability as applying to buildings, right? So that's sort of as far as most of our imaginations take sustainability. Now, interestingly enough, this topic at the bottom called Jevons paradox. So if you're getting credit for this, or I don't know, you can't sleep at night, Google Jevons paradox. But essentially, it's this idea that for all of these objects, there is an element of efficiency, like a light bulb or a car and a building can be more efficient in its use of resources. Well, Jevons paradox is a paradox, which is to say Oddly enough, the more efficient you make something, the more of it we consume. So like the classic one is the car. Like, that's cool. Wow, our family just bought a new, more fuel-efficient car. What do we do with the savings? Certainly, we're going to squirrel it away so that our child can go to a better college, or we can take a nice vacation in the summer. No, what people do is they move 10 miles further away, right? So they exploit and use the full resource rather than saying, money is saved. No, the same gallon of gas gets me to a house further in the country, right? So that's an example where efficiency alone isn't the answer. You got to think about it at a higher level. So LEED for buildings, which people, I'll just assume there's a general kind of awareness of this topic, was introduced in 1996, and it picked the scale of sustainability is the building, right? One building at a time, not the region, not a corridor or neighborhood, a building at a time. And that's how we're going to reform the world. And so it had these 5 categories, and it was, I think, a huge advance. We're all still talking about it, 15 or so years later. But it was, again, even that, as good as that is, was in a silo, right? And you can see it in examples like this. So this is it's a little bit of a dark slide, and it's not your eyesight, but I've perped out the building in the middle. Why? This is a LEED Platinum building. Now, LEED has levels, kind of like the Olympics. Certified silver, gold. Platinum's the best. This is one of them. And this building, as a standalone object, is wonderful. It barely uses energy, barely uses water. If you're hungry, you can probably eat this building. I mean, it is that, like some of the stuff, the art we saw. I mean, not the cardboard, but not the seatbelts. Maybe none of the art is edible. But anyway, the building is such a good thing within its property lines. But look, and that's that little box there. But look at its surroundings. Like, there's a sea of parking around this standalone building. So this idea that we're going to fix the world a building at a time has its limits, right? This building has no spillover effect. It didn't change the parking lots to something else. We call this a mixed context. It's part asphalt and part concrete, mixed, right? And then this street is called, it's actually a Michigan highway, where you see a pedestrian there and they're walking because their car broke down, right? It's not a place where human beings actually walk. And the LEED Platinum building didn't care, Drivey place, cool, Platinum, you got it, right? And then you get things like this. Back in, I think it was the year of 2006 or 2007, we had an intern in our office. Remember when the economy was good, you had interns? That was great. So we assigned ours to look at this phenomenon called green schools, LEED certified schools. And he took a random sampling of 10 around the country and found that there were 3 that fit this bill. This is one in West Brazos, Texas. So you see the little A up there at the top, that's where the old traditional walk-to neighborhood school was, in a little small town. And it was, a school that fit on one city block. Students, parents, teachers, everybody walked to school. What happened? They wanted a new green school. Where did they locate it? 3 miles outside of town on a highway, right? So, and they were consolidating with another district and so on. So the new school, when you read about it, what's one of its primary features? The rainwater coming off the parking lot at the new school is filtered. Right? Now, the irony of this is the old school didn't even need a parking lot, right? So the new school made a problem and broke its arm, patting itself on the back for fixing a problem it created by locating itself in the wrong place. Now, did the old school that was virtuous that who walked to school as a kid? I did, right? The old school that was virtuous and small town and very American didn't get the plaque. The new one on the highway did, the one with the parking lot that we shouldn't really have built in the first place. So again, it's a wonderful advance that the building is healthy and energy efficient, but something's wrong. This isn't kind of getting it all right. And then you get moments like this. So this is a joke slide. Don't tell family or friends or anybody serious that this is a real thing. I mean, it's a scene, but it's not a LEED anything, right? But LEED would approach this with great sobriety, right? It wouldn't say, that's silly, I refuse. It would ask some really sober questions. Are the escalators efficient? Not are they needed, are they efficient? Are the escalators made of recycled stainless steel or virgin stainless steel? I mean, this is how LEED would address this, and it would get a rating of some sort, assuming the escalators were powered by wind or the sun or something like that. So again, we as adults must apply critical thinking at every step. So it's a lot of fun to talk about these things. So Farr Associates, this is our timeline. We've been around not quite 25 years, and we started out like a lot of startup architects, and my friend from New York is here, doing little house rehabs, right? You start out, you do the bathroom, the kitchen, wow, we got a whole house, this is so exciting, blah, blah, blah. But along the way, above the line were our architecture projects, below the line were our planning projects. And we got in on the ground floor of LEED and did our first LEED Platinum building, you'll see in a minute, in 1999, and started applying the lessons of LEED to our planning scale projects. And that's why I'm here talking to you tonight, and you'll hear more about it in just a minute, but that graphic sort of says it. In 1998, I had this professional epiphany. Excuse me. We were doing a project called a TOD, a transit-oriented development, which is planning the land use around a train station. And you'll hear, or bus station, bus stop, BRT, whatever. And this was that. And we thought of this as a great, sustainable project. What was it about? It was about revitalizing a neighborhood that had been settled and been occupied by human beings for over 100 years, but had depopulated and lost all of its community institutions, lost half of its population, and so on. So we planned, in the foreground is the train track, and then you kind of see it's a very dark slide, hard to see, a U shape with a park. And so there's buildings wrapped around a park. Now it's evident that we were a real poor startup architecture firm because we seemed only to have two colors of pencil, drab green and drab brown. And so the drawing virtually doesn't read. But the premise of it was sustainability, repopulation, use of a brownfield, mix of uses, building transit ridership, introducing a park, an open space in a neighborhood that badly needed it. So really cool, sustainable project on one desk. On the next desk, we got our first LEED commission, what became the Chicago Center for Green Technology, commissioned by what we thought was Mayor for Life, Richard M. Daley. He's still alive, but he's not the mayor, so he can't be mayor for life, but he was mayor for a long time. And got the bug for green buildings, and Chicago is the world leader in having more LEED buildings in our municipal boundaries than any other city. But this Chicago Center for Green Technology, which our office was designing, was on the next desk to the project I showed you a second ago. And it struck me one day, and this was all about the LEED stuff. So energy, water, materials, indoor environmental quality, sites, and so on, were all just totally in this project, right? But I realized they weren't in the other project. And the whole thing about walkability and density and compactness from the planning scale project wasn't in the building, right? So I had silos in my own office on adjacent desks, and I said, hey, let's take LEED and drop it on that and see what that does. I should say also, when LEED happened, there are a few things we learned. One was this idea that you can put a heating and cooling system in the ground using geo-exchange, or often called geothermal, and if you put it in saturated soils, it's more efficient. In this case, the efficiency, I think, is a good thing. So there's kind of a synergy. There's things that work together. So if you approach it in silos, it's not as good. You apply it together, it's better. And on the right, I grew up calling that a ditch, but in my world in 1999, it was renamed a bioswale, right? And what was cool about calling it a bioswale is your billing rates went up a little bit. But it is actually not a ditch. It is a bioswale, and it is designed to retain water so that it re-infiltrate into the ground. So it's a little bit of a joke, but that's a ditch or a bioswale, depending on your billing rate. So go back to the first project with the drab two colors. We clearly had made some money on something, and we bought markers. And so you can actually see the drawing. It's quite bright now, much better. But rethought. And so all the green, what we call green bling from the Chicago Center for Green Technology, like this, solar panels, nature, vegetated roof, all the kind of hallmarks of green buildings, are suddenly now on all the buildings, right? And we're rethinking how the park functions, thinking of it as an instrument of common infrastructure. What do we mean by that? streets are built typically to do one thing: convey cars. Water leaves, God brings the water to our site, it lands on the ground, and it leaves as a waste product and discharges and pollutes streams. So this is what we call civilization. So this is how we've been doing it for a long, long time. So this was a different idea. Like, well, we're filtering the water at the Chicago center. Why not on city streets? Like, what if we intercept it, put it in the park, re-infiltrate it through the soil, and then put a geothermal or geo-exchange field under the park and heat and cool all the buildings that way. So it was a vision. It didn't get built in that form, but it was the aha moment. Like, if you applied LEED to a neighborhood, here's one illustration, right? Pretty cool. And so sustainable urbanism was cooked. It was defined, and here it is: walkable, transit-served urbanism integrated with high-performance buildings and infrastructure. So again, it's the stacking of all these things together. It's not a silo. It's actually finding the sweet spots, the sort of paybacks. When you apply two things jointly, you get a correspondingly big benefit back. So I thought this was it. We were off to the races. Every client was getting this new thing called sustainable urbanism. So we took it to our first project. This is a client in the south suburbs of Chicago, Orland Park, Illinois. And so we did a TOD plan, another transfer area development plan, and you can see we've got nice colors. Things look really nice. And so all the buildings have green roofs, they have solar panels, 1999. So this is now, 14 years ago. And we turn it into the client, they say, hey, really nice plan, love the urbanism, you've made a very nice place for us, but all that green stuff, like, we didn't ask for that, and it's confusing. Really? So let me explain it. Yeah, I get all that. It's still confusing. It's like, oh. So they didn't buy it. Our next TOD, we go up to Minneapolis, where it is truly cold. You think Chicago's cold. They're cold, right? And we tried to do a TOD up there. And the neighbors came out, and it was an opposition to the idea of scaled development in a neighborhood. So they were talking about 3-story buildings, right? At the end of a planning process, we had proposed a town center endorsed by the neighborhood at 4 stories. But the whole fight was about the height of the buildings. And the last night I asked this quite innocent question in 1999 of a room full of people in Minneapolis. What if all the buildings were green? Could we add a 5th floor? And all the hands just went up. It was like involuntary, like, rising from the dead. Like, just the hands went up. He looked at me, it's like, so wait, do you guys even know what that is? Like, no, green sounds pretty good though. Sounds pretty good. Like, wow, so like to a developer, I could get another floor of density? Like, do the math. That's like 20% or 25% more. Like, there's money if you stack these things. Like, it was helping. Or so we thought. Anyway, but I'm out there trying to sell this stuff. Our next client, Normal, Illinois. Okay, heads up. If your town is called Normal, you have to work harder. It's just true. Very smart group of people, really, cool, medium-sized town, about 50,000 now, it was about 40,000 then. And we brought, sustainable urbanism to Normal, and they bought it. They totally bought it. So Normal, Illinois, 2 years later, became the first municipality in the United States to require LEED certified buildings. Normal, Illinois, like, what's in the water, right? What do we feed them? And this downtown plan, and this was on the Amtrak line between Chicago and St. Louis. We proposed the circular public space. We'll leave the punchline for a minute, and all LEED buildings. And they said, we don't know anything about it, but it sounds pretty cool, and then they voted to require it. So that's like normal. That's now normal, right? Actually, that was normal 10 years ago. So if you aren't doing it, what's your issue, buddy? Get on with it. So anyway, Normal, signed up. And I do think that there is this aspect that, I travel a lot, and I get to talk a lot in a lot of places. And all places say, oh, we can't do that here, right? Only special places like Portland, Oregon, or like New York or San Francisco, whatever, are capable of doing progressive things. Which I say, excuse me, Normal, Illinois, right? If they can do it, don't embarrass me in having to convince a place that they're as good as Normal, Illinois, right? Normal's great. Nashville's great. So everybody can do this stuff. Here was the vision. So, that first idea of like, could the park filter the water off the streets? Here's the sketch translating that. So we're trying to catch the water off the streets, filter it visibly in a celebratory manner in the park, and have it so that kids can play in it. Now, who grew up playing, when it rained, you'd go out the house and you'd jump around and splash in puddles, right? Yes, okay, now that's illegal. You cannot do that in any sort of government-sanctioned way. Show me the release form you have signed to allow my child to touch that water that's origin and disposition I have no knowledge of, right? So there should be a team of attorneys walking around getting release forms, right? Didn't happen, right? So what is the water quality level here? We don't still know, but it's built and it's lovely. So here's Uptown Normal. After about 10 years, takes a little while to build places. They take longer than buildings. We did a form-based code, which is a type of zoning ordinance that emphasizes form over use, and Normal signed up for that too. Here's kind of a detail of the plaza. If you're familiar with science and DNA, there's a double helix, so water goes around once to be cleansed, and the second time to be enjoyed. And so let me show you pictures of kids doing illegal things. Jumping in water that has not had a release form signed or a scientific test performed on it before that child touches it, right? So meanwhile, the parents are standing there delighted that, Jimmy and Janie just got a wet bottom because they're having the best summer ever playing in this little fountain in the thing. So, if you're a landscape architect or an architect, you're trained to design public spaces so that water never stands deeper than a 1/4 inch. And that's so that people don't drown, right? So there's the fear design. This is the opposite. This is kind of hope, right? And guess what? It works. And I can tell you it works when I show you this next picture. These are college students. Now, college students, if you know anything about the economy, people age, and then the new people come up and take over the companies and invent the new products and become employers in your economy. So attracting and keeping young people to a place is key to everyone's economic success. Richard Florida, others talk about it in terms of the creative class. Here's Normal, Illinois. Now, it doesn't have an ocean, doesn't have a mountain range, no skiing. What are the other, no grunge bands, like, no Soho, whatever, no Brooklyn, but it's got this fountain. And so there's people, kids, sitting there doing whatever they're doing with their natural air conditioning thing, their feet in the fountain. So this is really cool. And by the way, the water's being cleansed in the process. And by the way, the whole thing's illegal because we don't know how clean the water is. So this I got to go back a couple slides. So this is also illegal. So what is this? It's the idea that this is, it's a traffic facility. So cars can circle the outside, right? But people are in the middle. So we proposed this in 1999. It got serious and the engineering started in 2002. 2 years, we fought the US Department of Transportation about whether or not human beings could occupy the center, or whether or not it needed to be a dedicated engineering facility. 2 years. And the engineers, there were some engineers? Okay. A joke may be cracked at your expense in a moment, but engineers don't engineer. They tend to pull a cookbook off the shelf and say, does it allow me to do this or not? And the guidance was, you can't, right? So we had a big fight, and part of the fight was it was called a one-lane urban roundabout. It's a type of traffic facility. After 2 years, this guy says, an engineer, hey, why don't we call it a circular intersection? So why would we do that? Well, there isn't any such thing. And so I don't have a book on my shelf that tells me what I can and can't do. In my engineering judgment, I think it'd be perfectly fine if people occupied the center, but not if you call it a one-lane urban roundabout, because I have a book that tells me I can't use my judgment to let the right thing happen. So 2-year delay, US Department of Transportation. So fast forward, this project wins the 2011 Smart Growth Best Civic Place in America Award but wait, there's more. This is the sweet irony. The Federal Highway Administration gave us their top award for transportation design excellence. Yeah. After having fought us for 2 years about whether people could occupy the center, right? True story, normal, right? So we don't have time for this 2 initials with periods after them. We don't. And so the rules need to change really fast. And the engineering professions need to move on, die off, some of them. I'm just being blunt. There are a lot of people that, we're counting down the months and years, so whatever. You're laughing. I like that you're laughing, but there's truth behind the humor. That's why we're laughing at it. So Sustainable Urbanism, the book, it's on Amazon, buy it and, life will be much better. But part of why we wrote the book was we had adventures in trying to do this, and we were sort of hitting and missing, and just for the first time sort of came up for air and said, what's anybody else doing? Like, let's capture that. So we cast a net and we found 200 projects that submitted, and we culled them down to 20. I want to share with you a couple of them. First of all, this idea of sustainable urbanism. You remember the definition, don't you? Walkable transit urbanism integrated with high-performance buildings and infrastructure. Like, goodness, that involves a lot. It must take a lot of space, correct? No. First thing, size doesn't matter, right? You can do this, there's projects in the book that are half an acre, 4 acres, up to thousands of acres. So certainly Nashville has 5 or 10 acres in 1 or 2 locations where it might consider doing this. So if you say, oh, we don't have the right size in Nashville, wrong, you do. And there's a case study to prove it. 2 I'm going to talk about are actually sort of on the small end. And these I like talking about a lot. They're quite inspiring to me as exemplars of when a developer with a vision sits down to do an exemplary project, which is the only thing I think developers ought to do. Like, why would you do an unexemplary project, right? So anyway, this one's called Dockside Green. It's in a corner of Canada in Victoria, British Columbia. It's 15 acres. It's on the waterfront. It consists of a super block. There's no streets across, so I have issues with the urbanism. Like, I don't like super blocks. I like more connectivity, but suffice it to say, a pedestrian can walk through. There's also a kind of water feature running up the middle. If you can see that little blue bit there, that is their on-site wastewater treatment, right? So this project does everything. Here's the whole list of all the things it aspires to do. It generates its own energy with a district energy system. So none of the 26 buildings, none of them have their own boilers, chillers, anything. It's all district done. Why would they do that? Certainly because they're tree-hugging environmentalists, right? No, the developer is an accountant. He is a bean counter. There is no more capitalist person than Joe Van Bellingham who did this. He's a developer with a bean counter. He said, heck, if I'm going to build 26 boilers, I can build one really big one. And it's cheaper, right? So that's what he did, right? And it's scalable. So as the buildings come online, you add more modules, blah, blah, blah. 26 buildings, all of them LEED Platinum. And that was pretty good. When the time this project proposed this, the world supply of platinum buildings was 24. So you've heard of it, the planet's called Earth, 24 platinum on the whole thing. In the corner of Canada, one project says, I'm going to do 26 on 15 acres. Oh my God, that's pretty good, right? But on top of that, he pledged $1 million forfeitable bond if they weren't all platinum. So if you're a betting person, you're probably loving that. But, oh my God, developers betting against their own success or failure or whatever. And I asked him, I met him, interviewed him after the book, and asked him, what's the deal? He said, we designed it just to be super efficient because we were going to do all these district systems, and we pulled out LEED at the last minute, and of course we were platinum, so I put up the money. I was never at risk of losing the money, right? Because we had designed it from day one to achieve a good outcome. If you do it at the last minute, you slap a bunch of solar panels on it, disaster, adds cost, doesn't work. But they had worked to optimize the overall neighborhood, not each individual building, not just the windows, not just the light bulb, the whole thing. And so there it is. Affordable housing's part of it. local First Nations culture is part of it. All this way cool stuff. Here's what a street looks like. It's a mixed-use building, boat building on the ground floor, housing above, right? Complete streets. We'll talk about complete streets in Nashville in a minute. And so here's that wastewater system. So it's like, most cities will take, in the metro area, there's a river going through the town. They put the waste treatment system on the downriver side of your town. So the town downstream from you is using that as their drinking water. So that's what towns do to one another on rivers. And you avoid it because that part of town then becomes the low-value part of town. It's often the industrial park, an airport's there, whatever, right? But it's not like the high-end residential sits next to or on top of the waste treatment system. So what were they thinking, right? So what they figured out is they have exemplary waste treatment technology. This is really the polishing phase, so after everything's sort of cleansed, it needs to be oxygenated, so the water flows out. And they were in the workshop, and they had their appraiser there, who was trying to set values for the housing they were going to do, and said, you know what, if you make a water feature, people will pay good money to face it. So, well, does it matter if it's waste treatment? He said, not if it doesn't smell. And so there were 40 units that faced this water feature, and they each agreed, they were projected to pay a $100,000 premium each. And so the $4 million was the cost of the on-site waste treatment system. So they cost neutral to do what's after tertiary, quaternary waste treatment system, exemplary treatment system. But like they made their most money on the housing facing the sewage plant. Capitalism, isn't it wonderful? Here's the other project I want to talk about. BedZED is in England. BedZED stands for Beddington, a town, zero energy development. So you hear Zed a lot in my world, our world. And it's about 10 miles south of London. And this project was initiated by a not-for-profit called Bioregional, on whose board I now serve. I was really inspired and asked to sign up, and they had me. It's also got an incredible list of things, but its top target is to build this mixed-use place that would live within the constraints of one ecological footprint. What's an ecological footprint? It's not a tight calculation, it's more of a metaphor, but it's the idea that the Earth has a certain amount of, say, oxygen it can replenish, or water it can filter, or firewood or carbon it can grow, through forests and so on a given basis. This is the idea that if everyone built this way, we could sustain that lifestyle. So 1.0. The United States, on average, we seem to need between 3.5 and 4 planets. So we're a little out of balance there. The UK is like 3.25. Singapore, 8 planets. Afghanistan, 0.01. So there's quite a range out there. But this is targeting 1.0 from a basis in the UK at like 3 and 3.25. And all these other wonderful things that they're doing. Here's what it looked like. So this is essentially attached row houses. It's hard to see, but everybody's a fee simple house. You don't have anybody living above you, but you have neighbors on both sides. Neighbors. Everyone's here is a neighbor. They all have neighbors too. And they're south facing, so that they're basically solar row houses. They have green spaces on the top, photovoltaic panels, a vegetated roof, which is that red, so you can choose the sedum plant in a variety of colors, so you can spell your name in your vegetated roof or whatever you want to do. And then those peacock-colored kind of wind vanes, they figured out how to do ventilation through the building without fans, right? Because the shape of that induces a draft up and through the ventilation. So aspiring to net zero energy. Got close, right? So here's the diagram, which is about all the systems and how, water's captured, used to flush toilets, treated on site. Electricity is generated during the day. If it's not needed on site, it's used to charge electric cars. This was a drawing from 2001 or 2002. So again, systems integration, not slapped on at the last minute and adding cost, designed to optimize the whole thing, right? And so the punchline, they built it with this 1.0 target. They got to about 1.2 planets, or ecological footprint planets, right? Which is pretty good. And then they found this shocker to me. So they had this whole thing, they evaluated everyone's energy use, water use, travel, all this sort of stuff. 63% of the benefit going from, say, 3.25 planets down to 1.2 was from bricks and mortar stuff, like better insulation, better windows, solar panels, district energy, things like that. And 37% of that betterment came from changes in conduct. People behaving differently in response to the place they had moved into, right? And to me, bottle that. Like, I want that. Bottle the changes in conduct. So none of us went to school for that. Architects are straying into this space. I think I know how to influence people. Who knows? But these are not people that are compelled to do anything. These are people that, of their own, make different choices, right? They move here, they sell a car. Why? They didn't need it. There's a fleet of share cars on this site. May not work in your neighborhood, but it worked for them. Stuff like that. So what intrigues me, and I have questions more than answers, is how a place like a neighborhood, this is too small to be a full neighborhood, but how a place like that can actually induce conduct, make people happy in a manner that happens to use less resources. They are not compelled. Their car is not stolen from them. They're not imposed to wear sweaters, or fail to shave, or other, unfortunate possible outcomes, right? So they have freedom, and they are electing their freedom in a way that has lower impact. Very interesting idea. And I don't think you can do the culture change like that at the scale of one building. I think you need a place. So that's another kind of opportunity of place. They went on to do this next project. I failed to mention one, BedZED cost a fair amount. Their target was to do it with no cost premium, and there was a bit of a cost premium. So they moved to One Brighton, their next project, and I'll just say, by eliminating parking, they got the price premium down. We Americans spend a lot on parking. And so that's what they found. That was the increment of being okay environmentally to being world-class environmentally, was if you throw in the cost of parking, you can afford it. So that was very interesting. I'm paraphrasing, simply just to tell a good story to be provocative. It's all true, but it's also a good story. So what the heck are we here to talk about? Nashville Next, right? So I hope I have challenged you. I hope I've painted a picture for the power of scaling up sustainability and use of place. So here's, in my humble opinion, what this plan should say. And I hope this provokes us to have a good conversation. So some people may have seen this. I think this came out back in November. There was a survey of attitudes here in Nashville performed by Collective Strength. Robin Rather out of Austin, Texas did this. A beautiful piece of work. And 10 conclusions, and I'm going to talk about a couple of them. Sustainable neighborhood. So this will be a diagram that we've done, which builds off some other earlier diagrams in the planning field. But the gist of it is, a neighborhood is a 10-minute walk across. Why? That's a reasonable length for a person to walk. It's got parks in it, right? They're the little walk-to parks, right? If you have kids, they will gladly walk with you, like that are shorter than this. They'll walk with you to the park, and then daddy, carry me home, right? So it can't be that far because one of us is carrying the other one home, right? So a couple, 3 or 4 minute walk is pretty good. And then in this case, the neighborhood, the sustainable neighborhood, also embraces the idea that habitat, natural habitat, riparian or river corridors can run right next to the neighborhood, right? And that's a good thing. The juxtaposition is good. But the humans have to back off. When nature gets nature, back off. Put a street there, don't go there, don't build there, fence it. That's their space. And you might have a jogging trail through there, but don't expect barbecues. This is not what this is about. Nature's privilege there. But then there's trade-offs, interesting trade-offs, like the diagram proposes streets. Not every street, but every 3rd or 4th street actually crosses over the habitat. Why is that? If humans sever those ties and don't build a street, but every mile or every 2 miles, once that street comes, it's 12 lanes, right? Because you've funneled all the traffic into one street. So if you keep it about every, I think it's 1/6 of a mile or 1/4 mile, the street never gets very wide. And it remains a walkable, safe street for kids and bicyclists and everybody to work. So it's a trade-off. So there's a lot of nuance here. The diagram won't begin to get that. In the diagram, every block gets a share car. People know what a share car is. It's a car you don't own, but you can hire by the hour. It's parked on your block. You can get on the internet. There's apps for it. Really cool. And if there's share cars in a neighborhood, what people have found is families might be able to go from 3 cars to 2 cars, or 2 cars to 1 car if they know that share car is there. A lot of families like, why do you have 2 cars? Well, on Thursday night I got bridge and my wife's got school board, and we need 2 cars on Thursday night. Well, if that's all you need 2 cars for, cool, use the share car, right? And you've just saved $9,000 for your family. That's really cool stuff. So anyway, it's about choices. It's about freedom. It's not about mandates. It's not about government. It's about good planning, offering good choices, right? Which is what we Americans do. Now, one of the things that interests me too in the book was this question of let's say you ask people, what do you want in your neighborhood? Say, I want the ability to meet my daily needs on foot. I need a quart of milk, or out a paper towel. The diapers, kids ran through the diapers, whatever. So I need that sort of trip. So corner store, that was called a corner store. Anybody grow up with a corner store on their corner? I had one, many of us did. How many housing units do you need to support a corner store? You'd like to, planners, we should know this. So Bob Gibbs, who's the world expert on this stuff, told me it's 1,000 houses, right? So that neighborhood, if you want to do it at 50 houses and say it's a neighborhood and it's going to have a corner store, no. It's not quite a neighborhood, and it's definitely not going to have a corner store. So there's a relationship between land use and the amenities that we would like to have in our neighborhoods. So you got to think about the size of it a little bit. And compactness matters. So if you have 1-acre lots and you say, I'm going to do a neighborhood and we're going to get a corner store, no, you're not. You're going to get 1-acre lots and you're going to drive to shop somewhere else. You'll never be able to walk anywhere. So there's that relationship between compactness, lot size, and the amenities, right? And now here's a map I like, and I should have found a better one for Nashville. This is we got hired by Toledo, Ohio to do a master plan for them a few years back. The green stuff that you see are their parks. So every park of any size we mapped. And then the white around them is the 5-minute walk to that park. And then the gray kind of charcoal fuzzy screen stuff, scratchy screen, is that portion of Toledo, Ohio, more than a 5-minute walk from a park, which is frankly most of the city. Now you say, well, how would Nashville look in this kind of map? Now maybe this map exists for Nashville. I'm sorry if you have it, I didn't find it. Actually, I didn't look for it, so that's why I didn't find it. But I think it might be out there. But anyway, so from a municipality standpoint, what's the right thing to do here? Well, parks are expensive. Someone has to acquire land. But that ain't the half of it. Once we've built it, somebody's got to maintain it. You got to mow the lawn. There's liability. Oh, my God, why would we ever add one more park? Like, who can afford that, right? What's the economic proposition to more parks? Well, in sustainable urbanism, we worked with a group out of the MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And they had done this study on land values, actually home values in parks. And let's see, I think this animates, yeah. So what they found in a series of studies that they consolidated down into what's called a meta-study, which I'm not quite sure what that is, but a bigger study than all the little ones, is this is measuring the distance from a given house to the park in feet. So 100 feet, 300, 600, 1,300, and then the sales premium for that house. So a house within 100 feet of a park sells for 24% more. At a quarter mile, 1,300 feet, 0 premium. So at a quarter mile, it's no value, right? So back one map. So the park, the residual land, the real estate premium associated with these parks is exhausted in the areas that are green and white. So the rest of the city that might actually have higher valued residential real estate doesn't, right? The study suggested that the size of the park didn't matter. There didn't seem to be a correlation between the amount of equipment in that park and the value of the real estate. So I only have questions. I feel like I don't have answers. But based on what I found and what we published, it seems to me there's a profit-making venture for that city to build more parks and over time capture the higher real estate value from that citizens will willingly pay to live closer to that park, right? Now again, this is not socialism, this is not government telling you what to do. This is people exercising in a free market to buy a better product. What is the better product? A house by a park. Why would a house by a park be better than a house not by a park? We don't even have to answer that. It's obvious, right? That's a benefit. Now, if you live on 5 acres, your need for a park is probably not as great as if you live on, you know, 1/8 of an acre or 1/4 acre, whatever. You don't have a park on your lot. You rely on one that's public. So anyway, food for thought, provocation, challenge you, right? Sustainable corridors. So Nashville, Rick Bernhardt, I watched a video from last week's meeting and floated the idea that there's enough underdeveloped land on the corridors, the pikes, I believe is what we're referring to, within Nashville to where you could accommodate a lot of the expected growth that's coming to the region in the next generation, the duration of this plan, in the city limits and on those corridors, right? So it's the low-rise kind of commercial corridors and so on that can get scaled up a little bit. So I think you need to do that, right? And why do you need to do that? For a lot of reasons. But the opportunity, I want to frame it up. So the sustainable corridor, this is the idea that there's a spine of transit, and then to make that economic, you need a certain level of density on both sides of the transit. Like if you live at very low densities, I've had this community meeting a dozen times. I live on a 1 acre lot in a 1 acre subdivision, and I'm really disappointed that there's no public transit to my place. It's like, well, why would you think that would be? You know, why isn't the bus running out, or the train, or the light rail running out to your 1 acre lot? Well, because there's not enough people, right? And so it is sensible in a municipal investment sense that if you are investing in BRT, bus rapid transit, or other facilities and transit nodes, that you have the people there to take advantage of it. And why? It's about choice. If you're a person that wants that, you will elect to live there, and you'll have that choice. If you don't want that, no one's saying you have to live there. But you probably, if you're a 1 acre lot or 5 acre lot, you probably won't have a lot of transit service. I'm just telling you the truth, right? I'm not going to fib to you. I'm not going to make it happy. That's the truth. So you can't, if you want things that are unmatched, this plan, I don't think, has any power to deliver those things. But in the corridor, there's also the idea that when human settlement intersects a natural corridor, sensitivity and thought is required, right? The width of that corridor matters. So for example, if the corridor is mostly an aviary corridor, like supports birds going up and down, they don't actually need the width that, say, a mammal does. Like if it's a bear or, you know, other lower mammals, I can't think of any names, foxes and so on, they need quite an area, right? So they're harder to do. But the size of the thing must be respected, or you will kill the species, and the habitat's underperforming. So another model for the sustainable corridor is one we prepared for this book we just did for APEC, which is the Asian Pacific Economic Cooperation Group, basically China and every country that faces the Pacific Ocean. So here's another model of a much higher density, a schematic of a higher density corridor. And it's thinking a lot about shared infrastructure. Like what if under the street, you didn't just have water in, wastewater out, electricity in, gas in, you know, and a couple other things, but you had like hot water in and out. Gray water goes out, comes back, able to flush your toilet for a second use. I don't know if water's a big issue in this region, but anyway, so thinking through what would the infrastructure have to look like, right? Well, utilities, the comments I've made about engineers, you know, I'm just having fun with you. Really love engineers. My brother's an engineer, so I have one in the family. But if you think engineers are, I have to tell a joke. How many architects does it take to change a light bulb? Does it have to be a light bulb? How many engineers does it take to change a light bulb? Change? What's change? So equipped with that joke, you think engineers are tough. Wait till you meet a utility company. You don't have any authority over them. You cannot make them do anything, right? So this is pie in the sky, unless you had, you know, a godlike creature that could impose all sorts of things on all those people. So this is another thing that I think is a term worth talking about in Nashville. Compact development, that is filling up these corridors, means more open space. Open space is beautiful. I have seen it. You are not too many miles into the country, and it is beautiful country here. So I understand the asset you have. It should be saved. Best way to do it? Build your new stuff in the city, right? Don't flirt with, oh, I'm going to live in nature and be close to it. You're going to have a subdivision, and then somebody's going to jump you, and you're going to hate it, and you're going to want to move further out. All this sort of stuff. Don't start, right? Don't go there, as they say. Don't go there. So item 10 in the report had this to say. Community leaders hope the 2040 plan will be actionable, pragmatic, and inclusive, a real blueprint, not pie in the sky. So I'm an architect. I actually prepare what used to be called blueprints, right? Things that are specific, that actually get built. Plans sometimes have lofty language, right? They are aspirational documents, they have goals, they have objectives, and ideally they filter down and eventually get adopted. But oftentimes, they don't. So I want to strengthen the effectiveness of this plan by being challenging. So get specific when using happy words. So happy words is a technical term that I use to refer to words that often appear in plans. Plans will often say, we want our community to be walkable, or energy efficient, or not car dependent, or sustainable, or any number of happy words, right? And then you search in the document, how did you define walkable? How do I know if I did or didn't do it? And the plan refuses to be specific. So my advice, be specific. When you say walkable, and don't put happy words in the plan. Oh, I think we're saying I need to wrap up. 2 minutes. I'm just getting ahead of steam, Scott, come on. Okay, anyway, be specific. So LEAD ND is the tool to do that, LEAD neighborhood development. It's all over the country. The Gulch project here is one. Prerequisites, I'll just go through these. So lots and lots of good things, too much text, especially with the lights on. We won't look at that. What's important to know about this is, again, LEAD neighborhood development was written by a bunch of, really smart people working across silos. So there were the smart growth people, the walkable neighborhoods people, the green building people, and they had to compromise and come up with that non-siloed standard. So it's all in there. It's like the magic, what's it called? The magic syrup magic? What's it called? Magic mix. What I'm trying to think. What is it? Elixir. The magic elixir. Thank you for that. But the Centers for Disease Control reviewed LEAD ND line by line, and scientists don't endorse. They observe on whether the data is consistent with findings. And here at the bottom, 57% of the data was consistent with published public health research. Essentially, the CDC said if you adopt LEAD ND, you will get a healthy community. It is good for you. Acting in planning, you have to act in the public interest. You can get certified, all that kind of stuff. This is a big one. Unified Public Works and planning. I can't even get one slide that's backlight. Okay. Your streets are too wide. They are too wide because the Public Works Department doesn't have to listen to anybody, right? So the planners keep saying, make them skinnier, make them skinnier, make them skinnier, and they are their own charter-empowered autocracy or something like that. I'm not choosing the word to be inflammatory. I just think that's what it is. You have a 50-foot right-of-way, a 30-foot wide street, and what is the consequence of this? You have reduced tree cover, because sometimes from the curb to the sidewalk, you have this dimension, 1.6 feet to put trees in. That doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And why is it? Public Works, right? So they need to be kind of redirected, I think, as part of this plan. Property values. If you look at any study that correlates street trees to the price of a house, the houses on a street with trees are worth 10% more than the same street with the trees mowed down. So again, if every house, and I'm not trying to gentrify, but if every house in Nashville could be worth more than 10% more, and why? Again, this is not the government imposing on them, this is not socialism, this is people with their pocketbooks agreeing, that's a great looking street with all those trees. Why is it being prevented by the agents of your government that are meant to be creating value? And then finally, A street that's that wide is one that induces people to drive quickly, right? It's wider. When you have a skinnier street, people slow down a little bit. Cars have to sometimes navigate and negotiate a little bit. These are streets designed for more than 30 miles an hour. The fatality rate of a car that hits a pedestrian at 30 miles an hour is 85%. Clock it down to 20 miles an hour, it's 15%. So these are unsafe streets. No tree cover, reduced property values, unsafe streets. Rein in the mania. So legalize sustainability. This is a fun one. If you wanted to convert this arguably dinosaur house, meaning nobody actually wants the 6-bedroom McMansion and so on, into a 4-unit thing that could grow food in its front yard and have a wind turbine and so on, every code has been violated, right? Can't do it. I want to recommend this to Rick and his staff. In your codes, find the word minimum, change it to maximum. Find the word maximum, change it to minimum. It applies to parking ratios, street widths, brightness, etc. I'm here to challenge, so just do that. See if anybody notices. Lead neighborhood is illegal across the country. A fairly reasonable standard of health, and not endorsed, but observed by CDC to be good for people, is illegal. And I think Rick agrees that parts of it are illegal here. Redefine affordability. This is a hot one. Traditionally, affordability has focused on the house. This is the slide I got based on our conversation. On the house, meaning if a family spends more than 30% of their income on housing, that's considered unaffordable, okay? So that's been the thing. So that's what the slide on the left maps a neighborhood in Austin, Texas. So I'm sorry, that was all I could grab. And you can see the whole neighborhood in yellow is the lighter color, meaning it's considered affordable. Now, when you factor in the cost of transportation, housing plus transportation, H plus T, the two of them together, and put a 45% of income cap on it, the same neighborhood becomes unaffordable. And so please steal this. There's a website you can do this for your house, your block, the house you grew up in, your sister's house, whatever, and you can compare any two sets of data next to each other. What this is getting at is that there's a lot of people that will drive 10 miles out of town to a cheap house on cheap farmland and say, well, I'm living the affordable life. But that family has to own 1 car per adult. And that's $9,000 a car times the adults. And that is a ton of money. And it makes the low-cost house in a ill-served location unaffordable. So for your consideration. And then build pilot projects. I'm such a fan of this. I think that things that are on the ground here that people can see and kick the tires advances the cause. This is a project I was going to tell you about, and the slides are so dark, you can't even see them. So finally, laugh as our values change. So I don't know if you can read this, but which is to say, the 20-somethings coming up do not share the values of the 60-somethings. And guess who's making the rules for the 20-somethings? The 60-somethings, right? People are figuring out different lifestyle choices. Maybe it's because there's an economic downturn and we have less money, but I also see a lot of satisfaction and joy in a different way of living. People would rather not be in a car-dependent place if they didn't have to be. When I sell books, I used to give out this button, right? This is the inherent value of cities, right? And a joke. And then this one. So the laugh slides are there to make this one point, and then I am truly done. Over a 25-year period of a plan, things change. Huge variables change. The culture changes, right? It will change. So all due respect to us older folk, don't listen to us, right? Listen to the people that are coming up and the kind of lifestyle and the kind of choices they want, because that's who the plan's being done for. And guess what? They want different things. I think they want different things from what we want, and they're kind of cool things. So listen up. And, come to CNU 21, the Congress for New Urbanism. It's in Salt Lake City this year, and thank you for your attention.
a few questions. I'm going to turn it loose and you all ask. No repeating, just hit it.
Sir.
You didn't say a lot about bikes. I know there's a couple bikers in here, and I'm wondering where they fit into your community.
Bikes are central. The ideal is every street's ready for them, does a complete street thing. The comment I made about vehicle speeds on neighborhood streets, if the cars themselves are traveling at 20 miles an hour, that allows bikes and cars. There's some controversy about this, but I don't feel any pain about it. The idea that bikes and cars can just be on those skinnier, slower streets in the same place. You don't have to designate a striped lane, especially in built-out neighborhoods where we don't have the freedom to add 10 or 15 feet to the width of a street. So bikes are essential. All the projects, I didn't mention it, but all the projects have intense bike stuff. So my bad. Great question. Sir.
How do you integrate tiny houses on it and modular housing with these plans?
Yeah, how do you do tiny houses and modular houses? There's a trend called micro apartments. I don't know if you've heard of that. So that's the urban version of tiny houses. Perfectly fine. One of the projects I didn't show is one called Christie Walk. It's down in Adelaide, where is that? Australia, thank you. And it's a series of tiny houses on a little lane through a mid-block, and really super cute. So it's totally in there. No, the American house has grown from, 1,000 square feet in 1940 to 2,400 square feet in 2005. And, it's like our drinks and our big gulps, and the houses are big too. Cars are big, so. Yeah, you only live in 1,000. Yeah, I want to get rid of all my stuff. I just, too much stuff. So, yes. Sir.
Where do you see the role of roundabouts in the United States, and can it be successful?
Sure. Yeah, roundabouts are great because they use no electricity because there's no signals to them. They reduce idle time. Traffic flows better. So they're overall a very good transportation facility. Their downside is they're hard to do retail around just because of the flow of things. Uptown Normal is working only because it's such a low vehicle travel condition. And I will say the coolest thing, and we saw some roundabouts today, the coolest thing is to do that facility and take out all the signs. The only one you need is arrow that says, turn this way. But if people, what the traffic engineers figured out a long time ago is if you are traveling at a low speed and the driver has to make eye contact with a pedestrian or a bicyclist or the dad or mom with a stroller, there's this incredible the negotiation that goes on. Everybody slows down and the injuries drop when you take the signs out. International finding. I mean, not every street, not every situation. When you're at high speed, you need the signs. But at low speeds, it's a whole different thing, and that big 2,000-pound or whatever vehicle becomes quite docile, like a cow, right? Sir.
Yeah, my question is, you mentioned about Chicago, and I'm familiar with that because I used to live there. But when they came up with the plan, they originally said, you cannot develop along the lakeshore. So they put restrictions there, just like they did in California. You have to have access to the beach. And so I'm a little bit concerned we're going in the opposite direction. We're not looking at public amenities first, we're looking at height as far as we can go as far as urban development. And I think there's two sides to urban development, or urban density. One is if you put so many people in an area and you narrow the roads so much, you add to congestion, you add more to pollution. And so I think it'd be good if we're going to develop a plan that we have some sort of urban boundary. Because not one size fits all. And we keep just hearing about sustainable development, but there's another side to that. We're just not hearing that. I have some concerns about that.
Yeah, great set of comments in there. I think you touched on 2 or 3 things, and if I don't get them all, my apologies. So, urban growth boundary, the idea that you can set a line in the sand. Portland, Oregon, Portland and the state of Oregon had enabling legislation to do that, and it's really challenging because if you draw a tight line, there's development pressure to jump the line. And then what they did in Portland was they draw a lax line and then didn't pay attention to the quality of development that was taking place in the growth boundary. So Portland is the the exemplar to look at there. Great that you live in Chicago. We'll catch up after the thing, figure out where. The lakefront in Chicago is a public amenity. And I think it's, ask anyone, probably you share this opinion, the lakefront is our greatest asset. The mayor believes our greatest physical asset. So I don't think there's any issue that was a wise public decision. It's a commons. Millions of people in the summer make their way from the west part of the city to the lakefront, and all families, all colors, all ages, all ethnicities, everybody is there. It's our great living room. So number two. And then I guess the question was density and sort of congested streets when you get all these buildings together. The thing the truth of it is, when you get a place that has a lot of compactness, like a lot of people living there or officing there, you have a mix of uses, like I can meet my daily needs within a block or a couple blocks, the need for the car drops. I don't know Nashville enough to know if there's places that sort of pass a threshold to where that's kind of working. But you have to it's a fairly high level of density. Along the Chicago lakefront, we have linear miles of that are continuous and in that form. So that's one thing. So, but you're right. If you had incredible density and everyone was driving their cars, you were going to have congestion. Truth. So, I think the other thing that the Robin Rather survey pointed out was people in Nashville are hungry for transit options. People want the choice. They want the freedom to drive or not drive. And so I think that your comments are consistent with the other findings, that people want choices. So,
one more question.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you're seeing redevelopment of transit corridors, which often they might have lots of strip malls, and maybe they made 4 lanes, that might be 6 lanes. When you redevelop those, I mean, it sounds like a wonderful thing, but it seems like unless you're cutting it down to fewer lanes, it's still not going to be a walkable place that people want. So how often are you seeing cities allow those big corridors to be cut down?
Yeah. The question is, I sort of floated this idea or Rick floated and I echoed this idea of redeveloping the corridors. And a lot of those corridors have wide streets, 4 and 6 lanes. On one hand, we want them developed. On the other hand, they sure have a lot of lanes. Do they ever become walkable and pedestrian friendly, and do they ever shed lanes? So there's a whole movement called a road diet, which is taking a lane off a road. It's done quite a lot. It's on a case-by-case basis. Rick may know the local examples, but a traffic engineer can often find that a street has 1 lane more than it needs, right? It was put there, funding was available, hey, we'll just build 1 more lane, and it ends up not being needed. And so there's opportunities to skinny those things up. A lot of cities that put in a light rail or streetcar system will actually just run it down the middle and take out a couple lanes willfully that way. That works too. I understand there's BRT that's either contemplated or underway. They have dedicated platforms that could take out a couple of lanes. So anyway, to be studied. There's no universal, just do this and it'll always work. It has to be studied. But you can make them better. I was going to say at 4 lanes, that's kind of the outer limit to me of what you can kind of make work. If it's 6 or 8, 8's way too much. 6, probably too much too. And a lot of the details then go to the intersection where you tend to add an extra lane for left turn. The engineers love the little pork chop island where I can do a quick scooty right turn, right? And, take out a couple of pedestrians in doing so. So the intersections matter there too. So we have to finish. We're done.
Unfortunately, thank you. Okay. Doug, thank you so much. That's
We're going to hang out and talk, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So he'll be around here, up here for about 20 minutes, but I want to, after thanking him, I want to thank all of you all for coming. There's so many people in this room who know so much about this and who have made such urgent starts for our city into many great pilots. And I just urge you to stay engaged. I urge you to comment. Go to the NashvilleNext .org and comment on the papers. And, join the conversation at NashvilleNext.net. And put your ideas in there. It's going to be so critical as time moves forward. Thank you to our sponsors who've made this speaker series possible, the Greater Nashville Association of Realtors, Regent Homes, and the Village Fund. So thank them when you see them. We've got a next great speaker coming in, Ellen Dunham-Jones, who's going to be talking on creating livable and healthy communities through retrofitting suburbia. And that will be on Monday, April 8th at 5:30 here at the Lasky Building on the Scarrett Bennett campus. So visit NashvilleNext.net and give us your recommendations. And also tomorrow night, that is Tuesday night, March 26th, tune in to News Channel 5's Open Line, and we'll have a group of great Nashvillians discussing this talk and listening to all your questions and others' questions. So thank you again so much, and we'll look forward to a great city, but only if we're all in there trying to make it happen. Thank you for being here.